Thank you very much for staying tuned. And we are on to another segment, our second and final segment on development focus with Gidi Ojo on ITV. Like I said earlier on, today is the 31st day of March 2021. How time flies. We are already 3 months into the new year. And in this segment, we'll be discussing about public safety, security, and access to justice. We just finished discussing human rights. So we are talking now, we'll be talking about access to justice. And to dissect this issue of public safety, security, and access to justice, the role of civil society, with me is the program manager of CLEAN Foundation. CLEAN Foundation is Center for Law Enforcement and Education. CLEAN Foundation, I will be hearing more from the program manager, Mrs. Ruth Olofin. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Happy Easter in advance.
Thank you. Same to you.
So, CLEAN Foundation is 21 years now.
23.
23. Okay. 1998.
Yes.
23 years. And my mathematics is very poor. Anyway, you didn't invite me to your 20th celebration, so I didn't take account from that time. But it's 23 years before the advent of the Fourth Republic. What informed the choice of focus on public safety, security, and access to justice?
So let me go down a bit in history. If you look at prior to 1999, where you had the military regime and the clampdown on human rights and all of that, civil society at that time was very, very active in trying to ensure that democracy comes in to stay. And that is essentially the role of civil society in pushing so that each of these laws that the military was bringing at that time that was against the citizens, as it were, they tried to ensure that let's enthrone what was obtainable in other parts of the country. Because if you look at that time, democracy was fast sweeping across the world, especially in Nigeria. So for CLEAN Foundation, at that point, when we saw that the country was getting into a democratic era, we were very wary of the fact that if we bring the caliber of security actors into a democratic space, tendency is that they will still be having the same practices, the same posture that they were having in the military era, have it, being practiced within a democratic setting. So for us, that was a takeoff point to say, let's try to reform the security actors by working closely with them. So that is about the trajectory of some of civil society in Nigeria, including CLEAN Foundation. Interesting.
Now, you have been doing this work for 23 years, still counting. Given the state of insecurity, what role has CLEAN Foundation been able to play in your programmatic interventions and all of that?
Okay, so there are several areas, several interventions that are broadly categorized under public safety and security. So we have around our elections, because we take that as a very critical process to bring in leaders that are sort of attentive to the people, transformative leaders. And in doing that, you need to have credible elections. So our role within that space is to ensure that within the process of election, there is peace. And security actors who are deployed to that point conduct themselves in line with guidelines, specific guidelines. So we tell ourselves that if you're able to get it right at that point, you have a security actor, a policeman come around the voting area and is able to conduct himself and manage the security environment. The tendency is that voting will go on very peacefully. People come in an atmosphere that is free of rancor, cast their votes, and INEC and other agencies who are involved will be able to take that process forward. You won't have any issues. Other areas we've tried to also respond to issues of public safety and security beyond the election has also been in the area of capacity building for law enforcement and security agencies. Specifically, we have an intervention that is looking around civil-military relations. That is not the only one. We recognize the fact that from history, what you've had, I cited the military era, 30 years, Nigerian psyche have been militarized, and we still have semblance of this even in hangovers.
What a kind of hangover? 30 years.
30 years, and you still have the hangover.
Even if you drank the whole of building, you shouldn't be having hangover for 30 years.
So we still have that. So we try to respond to that to say, let's see how we can foster positive relations between civilians and the military. So this fear of, oh, bloody civilian or a military man is coming. So if they say that a soldier is around here, the first thing your mind is up that what is this person doing here? And it shouldn't be that way, because if you look at one of the key principles of civil-military relation is the subjection of the military to civil authority. So essentially, we as civilians should take the lead. So we are trying to provide that intervention, having town hall dialogues where we bring the military and civilians, community dialogues to discuss around what are the contentious peace and security issues at your level. Are there issues that you want to deal with one-on-one with the military? So those platforms provide opportunities for people to come in and make interventions. And critically, again, looking at accountability, which is a very big intervention for us, is for rights violations that have occurred that involves security personnel. How do you bring such a person to account? So we are working closely with oversight bodies to ensure that hold your men to account, because that is the responsibility of the state. So there are quite a number of interventions. Another critical one I want to talk about is compliance. So the compliance of state actors to all of these laws that you have. And within the scope of access to justice, so we have laws like Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015, which is a radical departure from what we have in the criminal code, in the penal code. So we are trying to make them to be abreast of these provisions that these laws have provided. A classical example would be that, we are used to, our security actors, the police is used to arresting in lieu of. But that law has made a shift from that. So how do you sort of change their mindset, their orientation to these new provisions that are there? So there are quite a lot that we are doing around this area.
Now, when the Police Act 2020 was signed into law, I read your post on Facebook.
Yes.
You were so excited about this new law that, oh, this is it, this is what we need. But here we are. What excited you about that particular Police Act 2020?
Okay, thank you so much. So for me, the excitement was, if you look at the law that was passed in 2020, the Police Act, from what we were having, the 1943 Police Act. So this is 70 years in between. And for me, that was a baby of the colonial masters. If you look at the law, I did a presentation somewhere. We were able to do like a comparison, of the old act and the new act. You will see that clearly there was no deliberate action to infuse principles of accountability, principles of respect for human rights and all of that. For me, the excitement was we have been able to pass a hurdle, because it took more than 15 years to get that legislation passed. There were several interventions from civil society, the National Human Rights Commission, and even the police institution itself. We got to a point during the 8th Assembly that we felt that this is it. We have made it. The Saraki-led assembly was going to just, make this happen. And of course, they did, the Senate did pass the bill, but it was dropped at the House of Reps. So for us at that point was as if we are going back again to square one. So eventually getting it passed in 2020, it was a big milestone for us, because if we follow the tenets of that piece of legislation, it has the potential to radically change the face of policing in Nigeria. That was basically the excitement for me. So
now we have the law. How much of awareness have been created around this Police Act? Because now I read my friend who took, what's his name now? I've forgotten. who took the IG to court, over his extension of tenure for 3 months, that it was an infraction on the Police Act 2020. And should we be taking off on that controversial note, given the fact that you have said that this is a turning point in the administration of policing in Nigeria? So what's your take on that?
Well, in terms
Maxwell
of Maxwell Okpara, the lawyer.
The lawyer.
Yes. For us, that was really a very, it's a bad foot forward in terms of our expectation on the implementation of the act. Yes, we were thinking that, yes, looking at 2020, having passed the bill into law, we're just going to take off on that positive note in the sense that once the IG, it has reached the end of his tenure or his retirement, as it were, he was just going to go out, leave the office, and then you now formally bring in a new Inspector General of Police based on the recommendations from the Police Council. But that was not to be. So I think right there, the Nigerian thing, sort of played out. And that again has to do with powers that the president exerts on some of these issues in terms of appointing the Inspector General of Police. So there's so much power around that. So what I think is there was no recourse to the act itself to look at what has this act said. And as the president, the people's leader, I should be able to take, draw my inspiration in the next step in bringing a new Inspector General of Police. Although there were suggestions or there were some side remarks or sayings that the IG has set up some community policing intervention and it will be fine for him to just roll out and implement all of that.
He needs to supervise that for
sure. But that does not replace what you have already signed into as the president. So the appeal will be that whatever, when it comes to the end of the 3 months that the IG, the right thing needs to be done based on what the law has said.
Anyway, the court, the High Court has reserved judgment till I think April 19 on that issue. Now we have Police Equipment Trust Fund.
Yeah.
How excited are you with that too? And then we have the Police Equipment Board. I mean, a former IG has been brought. I'm asking you, I know you are not a law enforcement officer, but you work with the Nigerian police a lot. I think a very greater percentage of your work is with
the police.
Building capacities, research, and all of that. Yes. So, what's your take on the Police Equipment Trust Fund?
Well, Nigeria is a country that is interesting in the sense that we have very beautiful pieces of legislation. For the Police Trust Fund, that was another beautiful one that, in fact, was signed into law before the Police Act itself. And we saw that the trajectory that 2019-2020 took in terms of support reforming the Nigerian police force was a good one. But where we are beginning to have some slight issues in terms of implementation is the Police Trust Fund itself. So we took about a year before the board was constituted. And this is a fund that is supposed to be operational for 6 years. 2 years is already out. I mean, it's to come back to ask the same question. Just yesterday we were with them. We were trying to find out that having gone this far, the law has been passed. We need to see in concrete terms, what are you doing in terms of capacitating the Nigerian police force, in terms of refurbishing training institutions and all of that. Critically for us is trying to find out amongst the sources of funds that is supposed to go to the trust fund, a certain percentage, 0.003 or so, or 5 or so, that is supposed to be deducted from the profits of my commerce is not very strong there, but of corporate institution, they are supposed to pay a certain percentage to the trust fund. Has this started being in operation? That is what we are trying to find out right now. So my answer to that is, it's not very visible from the outside. I get a lot of calls, media houses call me from time to time, Ruth, what is happening about the police trust fund? And I tell them that I'm not working for...
You're not on the board of police equipment.
Yeah, I'm an outsider, but I'm also trying to ensure that the right thing is done. So I think for now, the role of civil society is to interrogate that process, critically find out, has this fund started operating? If it is having challenges in terms of operationalizing its mandate, what are the challenges, what are the gaps, and how can we come in as civil society to try to?
Let's see, your first caller, what's your name and where are you calling from? You are Mr. Clever. Okay, how clever are you? Ask your question. But we are not dealing with human rights again. We are talking about public safety and security. I didn't get that.
I get it.
I mean, the caption that is on the
screen. Okay, the caption on the screen.
Okay.
That's what I'm seeing on the
Okay,
screen.
there is an error with, okay.
Safety.
Participation, okay. You can participate, okay. Thank you very much for that observation. It is noted and the message will be passed to our IT people. Thank you very much for that observation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Is that all?
So,
okay.
So to just wrap up very briefly on the Police Trust Fund, our intervention as Clean Foundation, and like you rightly said, working with the police, as first to sensitize Nigerians. As much as Nigerians have said, oh, police is underfunded, police is this and all that, are you aware that there's actually a law that is supposed to support the police, to reform the police? So we went around geopolitical zones, sensitizing Nigerians at the very local level, put this in a language that people can easily understand, and then follow up the process.
Okay, so now I recall that the Police Equipment Trust Fund, after the NSAS protest last year, actually requested from the police authority to submit their laundry list of requests. And I think from this year, they are going to be getting their budget. If they have not gotten it, have their own budget. But I hope it will not be used to just set up infrastructure, because it's you that is telling us now that this is just to be operational for 6 years.
Yeah.
I thought it was there to stay, but if it's for 6 years and we spend the first 3 years equipping and buying operational vehicles and all of that, when would the actual
implementation
on the police institution itself, when will it take place? Anyway, let's move away from that. You also do a lot of work around elections, and you do a lot of research,
sure.
All spot mapping and monitoring of police conduct during elections. Run us through that. But before you do, we have a caller. Hello?
Okay.
Hello? Yeah, please tell us your name and where you are calling from. Please, can you speak loud? I can't pick what you are saying.
Yeah.
Okay, go on. Maybe we can make a sense of it.
Did it on speaker?
Okay. Sorry about that. I was straining my ears to get what you have to say. I don't know whether the fault is from this end or from his end. But you can actually call back. But before you start calling, okay, you can call in now, because we are. The number is 0809-987-1989. That is our studio line. And you have just 2 minutes within which you can call it. So your work on election Run us through what have you been able to discover? You were there in Kogi during the very turbulent and violent Kogi governorship election last 2 years and all of that.
Are you picking the call?
Yeah, let's see whether this one will be clear.
Okay.
Good morning. Yeah, what's the name and where are you calling from? Your name is?
Savior.
Okay, calling from where? Garike, Abuja. Okay, what's your question or comment?
Yes, my comment is about election management. How far is the organization of
Sorry about that. I think network is not friendly with us this morning.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can go ahead.
Okay, so thank you so much. Our work around the election is twofold. Like you rightly said, Clean Foundation is a research-led organization. So almost all our interventions are led by resulting to some form of research. For our election work, two things. We want to map the security threats ahead of an election. The idea is that we want to see what are the electoral risk factors that can make or mar an election that is upcoming, and see how we can respond. Not just we, INEC, the Nigerian Police Force, and other critical duty bearers can respond to address those risk factors. And ahead of that, even post-election, we also do some kind of monitoring, observation to see after this election, because definitely somebody is going to emerge as a winner. So we want to see, have there been violence, and put that together as part of our reports to send to INEC. Essentially, we are trying to fulfill the mandate to contribute to public safety, a peaceful public safety and secured Nigeria, credible election. So when we do all of this, hotspot mapping, develop our report, share with INEC, there are even times where the Nigerian Police Force, because we have done this in the last 23 years, the Nigerian Police Force will reach out to us to say, Clean Foundation, what are you seeing by virtue of the security threat assessments that you have done? On election day proper, our mandate is not just looking at what is happening in terms of how are people voting. We look at that, but critically for us is to see the conduct of an average police officer on duty. At what time did that person report to the polling units? At how is that person relating with voters that are on the field? All of these come together, the outcome, come together in our reports, which we present to INEC. You want to pick a call?
No. No,
Yes.
we are costing home. With all of these reports you have done in the last 23 years, what are the highlights of your achievements? Given the fact that we still have high incidence of election violence, in fact, the entire country is on tenterhooks about the issue of security generally,
yes.
not even just election security. Look at what happened in Ekiti State 2 weeks ago. 4 deaths over a state constituency by-election.
Sure.
How can we overcome this challenge of election violence and insecurity generally? Last word.
So what we are seeing in everything that we are doing is the politicians are to be held accountable for all of this. So how can we have legislation or reviewing the current electoral acts to see how we can have very strong, punishment, as it were, for anybody that goes against what is obtainable in the electoral act. For the politicians, what we see is that everybody, has seen power in Nigeria as a means to make it in Nigeria. To amass wealth and all of that. So you want to do everything possible, going against the laws of the country, to try to get into that office. So we have consistently said that if you hold these politicians accountable, if at least let one person be a scapegoat, tendency is that every other person will take a cue from that to say, okay, because this was done to Mr. A, I will not go that direction. But just to say that we appreciate the fact that this is becoming overwhelming. And really, it comes back to the states. What can the states do that civil society can plug in to ensure that there are peaceful elections? The issues of vote buying is a concern. It's an emerging trend. So at by-election in Ekiti, people still see that it's a do or die affair. We must make those offices to be less attractive so that, people are not killing and maiming others to get into office.
Thank you very much, Ruth Olofin, my beautiful sister from Niger Delta, married to a Yoruba man. Where is the Ruthie coming from? Because I see Ruthie, I see Ruth. Anyway, that will be a discussion after the session.
Sure.
Thank you very much for coming. I really do appreciate you shedding light on issue of public safety, security, and access to justice, role of civil society. I do hope when next we call you, you will oblige us. Yes. And that will be the size of our program this morning. This program is open for sponsorship and advert placement. Please, we also want you to give us feedback on what you think of this show. It is all about national development. Do enjoy your Easter break over the weekend and have a safe and happy Easter ahead. Thank you.